Your soulmate left you one final letter. What it says will break your heart. My beloved child, be still for one quiet moment. There is something hidden between yesterday and tomorrow that has been waiting for your eyes alone. It is not a coincidence that you arrived here now. Some messages are never spoken aloud because they are too deep for ordinary conversations. They are written instead, folded carefully between silence, memory, and hope. And today, you are about to unfold one of them. Stay a little longer, because the first sentence of this letter is not what anyone expected, and once you hear it, the rest of this journey will feel completely different. Imagine finding an envelope with your name written across it in handwriting you recognize instantly. Not because you have seen it recently, but because some things leave an imprint that time cannot erase. You hesitate before opening it. Your heartbeat becomes louder than your thoughts. Why now? Why today? And why does it feel as though this letter has been waiting for the exact version of you who exists in this moment? Sometimes destiny does not arrive with noise. Sometimes it waits patiently until your heart is finally strong enough to understand what your mind could never explain. The first line inside the letter is unexpectedly gentle. It does not begin with regret. It does not begin with blame. Instead, it whispers something almost impossible to believe. If you are reading this, then you have finally become the person I always believed you could be. Those words seem simple at first, yet they carry the weight of countless unspoken emotions. How could someone see a future version of you before you ever saw it yourself? What if the greatest gift another soul leaves behind is not certainty, but belief? Pause for a second and ask yourself this. Have you ever met someone whose presence quietly changed the direction of your life without you realizing it at the time? Not through dramatic moments. Not through perfect timing. But through small conversations, unexpected encouragement, and silent understanding. Those are the connections that continue speaking long after the voices become quiet. And perhaps that is why this letter feels alive. It was never trapped on paper. It has always been waiting inside your own awareness. But then something unusual happens. The words begin revealing memories that seem strangely familiar. Not exact events. Not predictions. Instead, they describe emotions you have carried in secret. The nights when you questioned your own worth. The mornings when you smiled while hiding uncertainty. The moments when you convinced everyone around you that everything was fine, even though part of you wished someone would simply understand without asking. How could this letter know those invisible chapters? The answer is not magic. It is connection. Real understanding leaves traces that survive distance, silence, and even time itself. Wait a little longer, because this is where everything quietly begins to change. The next paragraph says, I never wanted you to become someone else for me. I hoped you would become yourself because of you. Read that again in your heart. How many people spend years chasing acceptance, believing they must constantly prove their value? Yet the deepest connections often ask for something entirely different. They ask for honesty. They ask for growth. They ask for courage. Not perfection. What if this entire journey has never been about reaching another person? What if it has always been preparing you to meet your own strongest self? That possibility changes everything. Suddenly every delay carries purpose. Every unanswered question becomes part of a larger picture. Every difficult season transforms into quiet preparation for something your present eyes cannot fully recognize. The letter continues with unexpected tenderness. There were moments I wanted to tell you everything, but I realized some truths can only be discovered, never explained. Think about that. Advice can be forgotten. Instructions can be ignored. But discoveries become part of who we are forever. Perhaps that is why certain chapters of life refuse to reveal their meaning immediately. They are waiting for your perspective to grow before the lesson appears. Now imagine the page trembling slightly in your hands, not because of fear, but because something inside you recognizes these words. You cannot explain why. You simply feel them. And feelings sometimes travel farther than logic ever can. They reach places where ordinary explanations lose their power. Before this first chapter closes, one final sentence appears at the bottom of the page. I was never writing to the person you used to be. I was writing to the one you were destined to become. Take a quiet breath. That single line changes everything you believed this letter would say. Because perhaps the greatest farewell is not about endings at all. Perhaps it is about leaving behind enough hope for someone else to begin again. And if this is only the beginning of the letter, what could the next page possibly reveal? Wait until the next part, because the words that follow are the ones that almost no one is emotionally prepared to hear. They do not answer every question. They create a completely new one. A strange calm settles in, yet something tells you not to turn away now. The hardest part of the letter has not arrived. In fact, everything you've heard so far was only preparing your heart for the next page. Sometimes the greatest truths never rush toward us. They wait until we have enough courage to keep reading. So stay with this moment. What comes next may reshape the way you remember every connection you've ever had. You slowly unfold the second page, expecting sorrow. Instead, you find a sentence that feels almost impossible to understand. Please don't remember me for the moments we shared. Remember me for the person those moments helped you become. You stop. The room seems quieter than before. Why would someone ask to be remembered this way? Because they understood something most people never do. Memories fade. Faces change. Seasons pass. But the version of yourself that was shaped through love, kindness, patience, and hope, that remains long after everything else has moved on. The letter continues. If one day you smile without realizing why, don't search for me in the past. Search for me in the strength you've discovered inside yourself. Those words don't sound like a goodbye. They sound like a promise. A promise that real connection never disappears, it simply changes its form. Have you ever noticed how certain songs remind you of someone, yet instead of sadness, they fill you with unexpected peace? Or how a sunrise suddenly feels familiar even though you've never stood in that exact place before? Some connections leave echoes that don't ask to be followed. They simply remind you that something meaningful once existed, and because it existed, you became different. Take another breath. Because the next lines feel even more personal. There were countless times I wanted to tell you how much your quiet courage inspired me. But I feared you wouldn't believe me. You always underestimated the light you carried. Think about that for a moment. How often do we overlook our own quiet victories? The days we chose hope instead of giving up. The moments we stayed kind when no one was watching. The times we kept moving even when the road ahead was uncertain. Perhaps those were the very moments someone admired most. Not because they were dramatic, but because they revealed who we truly were. And suddenly the letter no longer feels like it's speaking about one relationship. It feels like it's revealing a truth about every meaningful connection life places in our path. Sometimes another soul notices our growth long before we do. Sometimes they become a silent mirror, reflecting possibilities we cannot yet see ourselves. And when that realization finally arrives, gratitude quietly replaces regret. If these words are touching something inside your heart, I'd love to know which sentence stayed with you the most. Share it in the comments so others can reflect on it too. And if stories like this speak to you, subscribing means you'll be here when the next chapter unfolds. You never know which message will arrive exactly when you need it. Now, the handwriting begins to change. It becomes softer, slower, almost as though every word is being chosen with extraordinary care. There is one secret I carried for far too long. Your heartbeat rises again. This is it. The moment the entire letter has been leading toward. But instead of revealing the secret immediately, another question appears. Have you ever wondered why certain paths close just when you believed they were finally opening? You search your memories. The opportunities that disappeared. The conversations that ended too soon. The plans that never became reality. At the time, each one felt confusing. Yet the letter gently whispers. Some doors were never meant to trap your future. They closed so you would keep walking toward the life that was quietly waiting beyond your sight. Suddenly, disappointments begin to look different. Not as failures, but as redirections. Not as endings, but as invisible invitations to continue. Then, at the very bottom of the page, one final sentence appears. It is underlined only once. The last thing I need to tell you is something I've never written to anyone before. The page ends there. No explanation. No answer. Only silence. And somehow, that silence feels louder than every word you've read so far. Before you go, hold on to this feeling. Because the final page doesn't simply reveal the hidden message. It reveals why this letter was never meant to find you yesterday. It was always meant to find you today. A quiet feeling lingers in the air. Almost as if the letter itself is waiting for permission to continue. Don't rush this moment. Some pages are not meant to be read quickly. They are meant to be felt. And the final page carries a truth that cannot be understood with the eyes alone. It must be understood with the heart. You turn the last page. For the first time, there are only a few words at the top. If you've made it this far, thank you for believing that some stories deserve to be finished. A gentle smile appears before you even realize it. There is no sadness in those words. Only gratitude. The letter continues. People often believe the greatest heartbreak comes from losing someone. But I discovered something different. The deepest heartbreak is watching someone forget how extraordinary they truly are. You stop reading for a moment. Those words echo inside you. How many times have people measured themselves by what they lacked instead of everything they had already overcome? How many dreams were delayed because fear spoke louder than hope? How many beautiful chapters remained unwritten simply because someone believed they were not enough? Perhaps this letter was never asking you to look backward. Perhaps it has been guiding you forward from the very beginning. The handwriting becomes steadier. If there is one wish I leave behind, it is this: never allow one ending to convince you that your story has reached its final chapter. Think about that. Every sunrise arrives after a night that seemed endless. Every season changes without asking permission. Every seed grows beneath the surface long before anyone sees the first sign of life. Maybe your own transformation has been happening quietly all along. Maybe the answers you've been searching for have been growing in silence. And maybe this very moment is proof that timing has always been working in ways you couldn't yet understand. The next paragraph feels almost like someone speaking directly beside you. One day you'll realize that the people who truly cared about you never wanted you to stay the same. They hoped life would help you become even wiser, kinder, and braver than before. Those words remove a weight you didn't know you were carrying. Because real connection does not hold people back. It encourages them to become more. To dream more. To forgive more. To believe more. Suddenly the title of this letter begins to reveal its deeper meaning. It was called a final letter. But perhaps final was never describing the relationship. Perhaps it was describing the end of doubt. The end of waiting for permission. The end of believing your brightest days belonged somewhere behind you. The letter reaches its final paragraph. The handwriting grows lighter. Almost as though every remaining word is being entrusted to you. If you ever wonder where to find me, don't search through old memories. Find me in every brave choice you make. Find me in every act of kindness. Find me every time you choose hope when giving up would have been easier. That is where every meaningful connection continues to live. Silence follows. Not an empty silence. As this story comes to a close, remember this feeling. Sometimes the most meaningful letters are not the ones that answer every question, they are the ones that inspire a completely new beginning. Thank you for staying until the final page. If this journey resonated with your heart, feel free to share your thoughts below and subscribe so we can continue exploring stories that awaken hope, purpose, and possibility together. And as you walk forward from this moment, carry one final sentence with you. Not because someone else wrote it, but because, from this day on, it belongs to you. The most beautiful chapter of your story was never left behind, it has been quietly waiting for the moment you finally believed it could begin. The story may feel complete, yet one final truth remains. Don't leave just yet, because sometimes the message written after the ending becomes the one that changes everything. What you are about to hear was never inside the letter itself. It was hidden in the empty space after the final word, the place where every reader must decide what happens next. You hold the folded letter close for one last moment. There are no more pages. No secret envelope. No unexpected twist waiting beneath the paper. And strangely, that is exactly the point. For the first time, you realize the letter was never asking you to search for another message. It was inviting you to write your own. A quiet realization begins to grow. Every sentence you read was pointing toward this single moment. Not toward the past. Not toward what could have been. But toward what can still become. Imagine placing that letter inside a drawer and walking toward a window. Outside, nothing looks extraordinary. The same streets. The same sky. The same familiar world. Yet your eyes have changed. And when your perspective changes, even ordinary moments begin to reveal extraordinary meaning. Perhaps someone smiles at you today. Perhaps an unexpected opportunity appears tomorrow. Perhaps a conversation you've been delaying finally begins. None of those moments arrive with dramatic music. They arrive quietly. Just as every meaningful chapter in life usually does. The greatest lesson the letter leaves behind is beautifully simple. Never let yesterday become stronger than tomorrow. Never allow fear to speak louder than possibility. And never believe that your story reached its highest point before today. Because every sunrise carries a blank page that no one else can write except you. Now imagine that the person who left this letter could see you one more time. Would they want you to remain standing in the doorway of old memories? Or would they hope to see you walking confidently toward everything you were created to become? The answer has been hidden in every page. They would choose your future. Every single time. That is why the final letter never asks you to hold on. It gently asks you to move forward. Not by forgetting, but by carrying the best parts of every experience into the life waiting ahead. And perhaps that is the most beautiful kind of farewell. One that quietly becomes a beginning. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to hear one word in the comments that describes how it made you feel. And if journeys like this speak to your heart, consider subscribing so we can continue discovering stories filled with hope, purpose, and meaningful reflection together. As this narration comes to its final moment, remember one last thought. Some letters are written with ink. Some are written with memories. But the most important letter you will ever read is the one your future self is writing to you today. May every choice you make from this moment forward become another beautiful sentence in that letter. And when you look back someday, you won't remember this as the story of one final goodbye. You'll remember it as the day a new chapter quietly began. One final whisper remains, and strangely, it isn't coming from the letter anymore. It is coming from the silence you carried with you after reading it. Stay with this feeling for just a little longer. The journey may be ending, but the meaning behind it is only beginning to unfold. Days pass. The letter stays safely tucked away, untouched. Yet something unexpected begins to happen. You no longer think about the words every hour. Instead, you begin living them. One morning, you catch yourself smiling for no obvious reason. Another day, you face a challenge that once would have overwhelmed you, yet this time you remain calm. You don't even notice the change at first. Growth rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, almost invisibly, until one ordinary moment reveals that you are no longer the person you used to be. And then a thought gently crosses your mind. What if this was the real message all along? Not to hold on to a letter. Not to search endlessly for hidden meanings. But to become someone whose life becomes the answer. That realization feels lighter than anything you've carried before. The questions that once demanded immediate answers suddenly lose their urgency. Because you understand something beautiful. Not every mystery exists to keep us wondering. Some mysteries exist to keep us growing. As you continue forward, you begin noticing small moments you would have ignored before. A kind conversation. A familiar laugh. A sunrise that paints the sky differently than yesterday. A quiet evening that reminds you how peaceful life can feel when your heart is no longer fighting yesterday. These aren't coincidences. They are gentle reminders that life keeps offering new pages to anyone willing to turn them. Perhaps the person who left that letter hoped for exactly this. Not tears. Not endless longing. But a future where every lesson became a source of strength. You realize something else. The letter never tried to predict your future. It trusted you to create it. And maybe that is the greatest expression of belief anyone can offer another person. To say, without saying the words, I know you'll find your way. Before this story truly fades into memory, let me leave you with one final reflection. Think about someone who encouraged you, even in the smallest way. Maybe they never knew the impact they had. Maybe they never realized that one conversation, one smile, or one moment of kindness quietly changed the direction of your life. A final thought begins to rise. Not from the pages you read, but from the person you have become because of them. If you've stayed until this moment, then perhaps this story was never simply meant to entertain you. Perhaps it was meant to leave a quiet light behind, one that continues long after the narration ends. Picture yourself months from now. The letter is no longer sitting on your desk. Its words are no longer fresh in your memory. Yet somehow, they are present in everything you do. You speak with a little more patience. You listen with a little more understanding. You walk with a little more confidence. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because you finally realized that every meaningful chapter leaves behind a gift for the next one. That is when the greatest discovery quietly arrives. The final letter was never the end of a relationship. It was the beginning of a new perspective. Every sentence was gently guiding you toward one truth. Your future deserves more of your attention than your regrets. Think about how often people wait for one more sign before taking the next step. One more confirmation. One more perfect moment. One more reason to believe. But what if the sign has already appeared? What if it wasn't hidden in the sky, but hidden inside the courage that has slowly been growing within you while you've listened to this story? That changes everything. Because suddenly, you're no longer waiting for life to happen. You're ready to participate in it. The memories remain. Not as chains, but as quiet reminders of how far you've come. Every lesson becomes a foundation. Every challenge becomes a teacher. Every unanswered question becomes proof that life still holds beautiful mysteries waiting to unfold. And isn't that what hope truly is? Not knowing every detail, yet choosing to move forward with an open heart anyway. As this journey reaches its final moments, imagine placing that letter into a small wooden box, not to lock it away forever, but to honor what it gave you. You gently close the lid. You smile. Not because nothing was lost, but because so much was found. A stronger heart. A clearer mind. A deeper appreciation for every meaningful connection that has shaped your path. Then, without looking back, you step outside. The wind feels different. The light feels warmer. The road ahead feels wider than it ever has before. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. And perhaps that is the greatest ending any story could ever offer. Not an answer that explains everything, but a transformation that changes the way you see everything. So if one day you remember this letter again, don't remember it as a message of farewell. Remember it as the quiet turning point that reminded you of something you were always capable of becoming. Carry that truth with you. Protect it. Share it through the way you live. Because the most powerful letters are never the ones we simply read. They are the ones we continue writing with every choice we make. And maybe, somewhere in the future, another version of you will look back on this very moment. Smile with gratitude. And whisper, "I'm so glad I kept turning the page." The pages are gone now, yet one quiet echo refuses to fade. It isn't asking you to look back. It isn't asking you to search for what was lost. Instead, it asks one final question that only your future can answer. What kind of story will you write after reading the last letter? For a long moment, you stand in complete silence. No music. No dramatic farewell. Only the gentle realization that every ending eventually becomes someone's beginning. You slip the letter into a safe place, not because you need to read it again, but because you finally understand its purpose. It was never meant to become something you depended on. It was meant to become something you outgrew. That thought surprises you. At first, it almost feels impossible. How can something so meaningful become something you no longer need? Then the answer quietly arrives. Because the lesson has already become part of you. A teacher does not walk beside every student forever. A map is no longer needed once you recognize the road. And a letter completes its purpose when its words begin living inside the person who read them. You take another step forward. The air feels lighter. The future feels closer. And for the first time in a long while, uncertainty no longer feels frightening. It feels exciting. Because every unwritten chapter carries possibilities that no finished chapter ever could. Imagine meeting someone years from now. They ask why you seem so calm when life becomes unpredictable. You smile. Not because you have all the answers, but because you learned that peace is not created by certainty. It is created by trust. Trust that every season teaches something valuable. Trust that every delay can carry hidden purpose. Trust that every sunrise brings opportunities yesterday could never offer. Perhaps that is the invisible gift the letter left behind. Not instructions. Not predictions. But perspective. And perspective quietly changes everything. The voice inside your heart becomes clearer. Keep walking. Not because the road will always be easy, but because movement creates new horizons. Keep believing. Not because every dream appears overnight, but because hope grows stronger each time you choose it. Keep becoming. Not because you are incomplete, but because life always has another beautiful layer waiting to be discovered. Suddenly, you realize something extraordinary. The letter never tried to define your destiny. It simply reminded you that your destiny has never stopped unfolding. Every conversation, every challenge, every unexpected opportunity, every quiet morning, every peaceful evening, they are all pages in a story that is still being written. And perhaps the most beautiful chapter has never been the one behind you. Perhaps it is the one waiting just beyond the next decision you make. As we approach the final moments of this journey, let this thought remain with you. There are people who spend their lives searching for one perfect message. Yet sometimes the greatest message is not something we receive. It is something we become. So when tomorrow arrives, carry this invisible letter with you. Not in your hands, but in your choices. In your kindness. In your courage. In your willingness to keep moving forward even when every answer has not yet appeared. Because that is where lasting transformation begins. And maybe, just maybe, the person who wrote that final letter was never hoping you would remember every word. They were hoping you would remember your own strength. That hope has now become yours. Guard it well. The story may be ending here, but your next chapter is already waiting for you to write the very first sentence. There is only one last moment left, and somehow, it feels quieter than every moment before it. Not because the story has run out of words, but because the heart has finally found the meaning it was searching for. Stay until the very last line, because this ending was never meant to close a story, it was meant to open your own. Imagine returning to the place where you first found the letter. Everything looks exactly the same. The chair is still there. The window still welcomes the morning light. The gentle breeze still moves as if nothing has changed. Yet you know something has. You have. You smile, not because every mystery has been solved, but because you no longer need every answer to keep moving forward. That is a quiet kind of freedom. The kind that cannot be given by another person. The kind that grows only when you choose hope over hesitation. As you take one final look at the folded letter, one sentence comes back into your mind. The greatest gift I could ever leave you was never my words, it was the courage those words awakened within you. This time, you don't simply read the sentence. You believe it. And belief changes everything. You begin to notice how far you've traveled since the first page. The uncertainty that once filled your thoughts has become curiosity. The weight you carried has become wisdom. The fear of endings has become excitement for beginnings. That is the transformation hidden inside every meaningful journey. Not a change that happens around you. A change that happens within you. Perhaps that is why this story found you today. Not because it wanted to convince you of something, but because it wanted to remind you of something you had quietly forgotten. That your future is still unwritten. That your best qualities are still unfolding. That every sunrise is another invitation to become a little more of who you were always meant to be. Before we say goodbye, take one slow breath. Think of one dream you placed on hold. One conversation you've been waiting to have. One step you've been afraid to take. Now imagine your future self smiling back at you and saying, "Don't wait for the perfect moment. The moment becomes perfect when you choose to begin." Maybe that has been the hidden message all along. Not to keep reading old letters, but to start writing new chapters. If this journey has stayed with your heart, I'd love to know what part touched you the most. Leave a comment below so others can read your thoughts, and if stories like this bring you hope and reflection, consider subscribing so we can continue sharing meaningful journeys together. And now, the letter is gently placed back where it belongs. Not as a reminder of what is gone, but as a symbol of everything that is still possible. You take one final step forward. The light ahead feels brighter. The path feels clearer. The future feels closer than ever before. No music announces the ending. No voice calls you back. Only one quiet truth remains. The most beautiful letter was never the one you held in your hands. It was the one life has been writing inside your heart from the very beginning. So walk forward with confidence. Speak with kindness. Dream without fear. And remember, some stories end with a farewell. But the most unforgettable stories end with a new beginning. This is not the end of your journey. It is simply the first page of the life you are now ready to write. And somewhere beyond today's horizon, your greatest chapter is already waiting for you.